Welcome to this week's episode of Marijuana Mind with yours truly, Dr. J. Davis, and my great pause, and my
And your
mythological
patient
co-host,
co-host
my
that just
mythological
waits.
co-host.
You wait so long, but I counted it today. I was like, I'm not going to say anything. And I didn't. I did good.
The first time that you haven't laughed in a long time.
I just don't feel you're funny anymore.
Yeah, that's what I was, and I lost it.
I'm kidding. No, I'm trying to be better about being a supportive co-host.
Mhm.
I had a birthday this week, and I feel like I need to mature as a co-host and a supportive friend.
Yeah. Well, today's day number one. You're doing okay.
It's
So
like day 3. My birthday was Monday. You forgot it, but I'm gonna just put that action cam on your credit card and everything will be
wait,
fine.
wait, I didn't forget your birthday.
Action cam, credit card, Insta
I didn't
360
I didn't forget her
in the
birthday.
mail. It's already on the way.
I
So
said happy
what you
birthday to you. I said
did,
getting
happy
ready
birthday,
for your
bitch.
birthday. That's right.
It
That's
was
right.
great. It was so heartfelt. You were like the third person that told me that day. I was like, yes, Davis for the win. It's great. It was a great birthday.
Yeah. And should we talk about our guest today or
No,
just
no,
do
she's
little
fine.
I mean,
updates?
No,
I
she's
mean,
fine.
like we could talk about birthdays all day. I love me a good birthday.
Bri,
What's your
I mean,
sign, Bri?
we get to have one every
Gemini.
year. It's crazy. What
What
is
are
she?
you?
I'm a Gemini.
Oh, like me.
Oh,
Okay.
oh yeah.
Ooh,
Oh yeah.
all
We're
right.
just
I don't know
saying.
what this means, having 2 Geminis on one show.
It means
Well,
you
the
have
show's
no
not
idea
long
what you're
enough.
gonna get.
That's great. So go ahead, Justin, introduce our amazing and like vivacious little guest today. I just adore her.
That's my fellow Gemini, Bri Padilla, coming to us
Yes.
from where you're in Nevada. I don't know where in
Yes. Las Vegas. We're
Las
in Sin
Vegas,
City,
Sin
baby.
City. And originally, I'm gonna guess from New York, the state of New York,
You guessed that?
because she went to
Holy
Ithaca College. I know
no.
that.
Oh,
And it
okay.
was a
I thought you were
journalism
gonna
major
claim. I thought you were
before
gonna
moving out
claim
west.
organics.
I'm from Santa Monica originally.
Oh,
So I hail from LA and I gallivanted off to Ithaca on a whim without ever having been to New York. So
What
I
was
picked
his name? What was his name?
journalism, the
no,
Oh,
because
truth.
they
okay,
have a good
journalism.
journalism school there.
Yeah, yeah. I went searching for truth and to find a way to help the truth impact the world. And then I found cannabis and patients, and here we are.
Yes.
That's
So you're also, it's important to mention that you are a multimedia dynamo and genius and
Yeah,
developing
we're humble.
businesses everywhere in all multimedia facets.
he
Um,
creeped your
it-
LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Just
you
saying.
did. I love
Yeah.
that. I
I
love that's
just
actually where
course.
some of that training was put to work on that LinkedIn profile. I love to hear that.
And and I believe that you got your you kind of got your start in the real world. You were one of the founding members and communication director of Normal in Las Vegas.
Mhm.
Is that right?
I was, yeah. So I was a little, I was actually a content writer for a digital marketing agency, and we helped get the first medical dispensary to rank on Google. So I really learned how to like write for education, for cannabis, and for frankly search results. And through that, I discovered our incredible patient community as a writer. And so I went to my first normal meeting and they're like, yo, we need help. We need to make our board official. And I was like, first normal meeting, who came out with the board seat? Hey. But no,
she
truly
just
it was
comes in
incredible.
there and is like, we're gonna make it happen. And then Mike
It's
drops.
fine.
Yeah, it's totally fine.
Bree
Las
saves the
Vegas
world.
normal.
Did
First
you
meeting.
seek out
Adjourned.
Normal because it was a good job or because you were already drawn to the cannabis world?
I was truly looking for community. I
Mhm.
have my own patient story, my own healing story. I personally was looking to pursue a career in nonprofit work and like looking for that as my secondary degree. I honestly thought it would be more in like the domestic violence space, but I fell into this patient community here in Nevada and Las Vegas. They're incredible. They're the reason our industry exists, and I got to by occupying that space and being able to help that chapter communicate, but then also branching up into Women Grow, I got to learn what people were valuing in terms of the experience, like what they were looking for when they come into rooms that have cannabis in the name or in the vibe. And it's varies, right? You have patients who are looking for education, you have business owners or ancillary service providers looking to to get their foot in the door. And they're all having to make different decisions in order to be in that room. So like some of the decisions for me to kind of move up in that advocacy space and that space create building space were conversations about the cost of tickets, right? So for us, when we were in Normal, Women Grows, I think charging a little bit more for tickets. So I had patients that were like, I want to talk to that doctor that can tell me about my medicine, but I also have to pay for my medicine. Mm-hmm. Right. And like, oh, I don't just stab me in the heart and twist it. So my wonderful business partner, like when she got the opportunity to head up that market, I was like, I'm in for it, but we have to like, let's see what we can do to merge and bridge like this advocacy community more into it. And then through that participation, I was able to kind of grow as a professional in the industry, continuing to build rooms, and got blessed enough to build rooms and have my colleagues that I met kind of invite me into the chamber when it was established a couple of years later. So like our president, Tina Ullman, joined Normal right after I left. I actually got to meet her while she was deciding to be in the space and was just so impressed by her intention and her heart. And to this day, I'm continued to feel that same level of admiration for a lot of the people that I get to work with every day, as now the executive director of the chamber, because I was able to dedicate the last 3 years as a volunteer and then growing that up into the first paid employee for the chamber at this level. And it's been a honor. And I just hope that I can grow up to fill the shoes fast enough, because we are racing towards impact. You know, we've I don't want to talk too much about myself.
You've done a lot of stuff with the Chamber of Cannabis. It was founded in 2020 in Nevada, and you actually were successful in passing or helping to pass AB 341, which was legalizing consumption lounges in Nevada, which was on May 31st of 2021 after a Senate vote and then a very difficult House vote. It was close.
It was.
That was huge for you guys, and that was huge for the industry. What was that like, and how was that working on that bill?
So it was, thank you for highlighting that. It's super funny because that was an endeavor that, believe it or not, was 6 years in the making.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of there's a joke in our space here, especially in Nevada, because we have a legislative session that runs every other year. So we always joke, especially with cannabis, it's like 3 sessions before anything gets through, really, because there's that fear. There's always going to be a certain level of education that is incumbent upon us in this space. And I imagine it's going to be that way for a while. And that's a very similar hurdle that lounges faced. Lounges were actually legalized by the city of Las Vegas 2 years prior to the consumption lounge bill passing, but that was shut down by the creation of our regulatory body. And they wanted to let the regulatory body get up and running. So we were finally able to get it through. It was incredible. We were able to create effectively 2,000 new jobs at the baseline for the industry. And we are going to be able to create and build a new hospitality experience around lounges and to really be the leaders for these types of spaces and experiences in a way that we haven't seen other markets be able to.
Why do you think that there's resistance to it? I mean, really, I'm asking systemically, but then even more so in somewhere, like Las Vegas, that basically, celebrates and people of sin or people going out and, drinking alcohol and doing things. And then we're talking about somewhere where people can go basically and hang out and smoke a little weed. Like, it's not like people get violent or crazy.
It's a safe space.
Yeah. Why would there even hesitation?
Why? Well, I mean, it's a very simple answer, and I'm going to give a lot more context, but very, very simply put, the drug war was really freaking successful. It did a really, really good job of othering cannabis users and cannabis use in general. And one of the things that I can say as an advocate and as a professional, we kind of gave it to the mainstream. We're like, okay, we'll make it incumbent upon us to educate. Will we agree to be treated as a vice? Well, when you're treated as a vice, you're treated as a vice.
Yeah, just like, prostitution is legal in Vegas, and it has an area, just like gambling is legal and it has an area. Why can't cannabis have their area? But that would mean you're a sin. like the safe.
Yes. So it's a very interesting dichotomy. And we're like, you know what? Hell yeah, we'll sin. We'll do it safely. We'll do it transparently. We'll do it in a way where there's a lot of rules and you have a lot of oversight, because we also understand that the plant and its people are safe, and that the people and the plant deserve access and spaces where it can be enjoyed, right?
What additional regulations do they put on you in addition to the very strict regulations you would follow as a cannabis company under the Nevada program? Because it's already strict. Nevada is very strict.
We're incredibly strict. Some of the issues and the tensions and like some of the strictness comes in where the HVAC requirements, for example, caused that's like the most basic one. Most recently, we had some really strict HVAC requirements established and recommended. And we had to have several industry workshops where people were like, you're making this a non-viable business because of the requirements. I want to say it was like 20 cycles of air per second or per minute in non-smoking areas and 30 in smoking areas. And I'm not an HVAC expert in any way, shape, or form, but I have had the benefit of listening in and hearing from experts. And they quoted that those requirements for an approximately 10,000 square foot space would be $250,000 to $300,000 in just HVAC. Now, if you take a look at the fact that our operators also are required to outfit the buildings that they rent. So like in Las Vegas, you'll have a building and the property's owned by somebody. The building is sometimes owned by the property manager, sometimes not. Somebody owns the building, and then you as the operator have to go in and outfit it to be compliant. So all of those fixtures, those will become the owner of the property owners. Those are not your fixtures to take back. So like operators are also going to have to invest heavily into the areas that they're going to be building these businesses in. And that's also something that I don't think folks fully understand either, right? I've been to a couple of community meetings where even in our incredibly liberal town, we've heard, fears about, children making their ways into these places or getting their hands on products.
Children go to like strip clubs in Vegas or into like brothels, or I don't know what they call
the bar.
Yeah.
Just a plain old bar.
Well, and that's the thing is like children aren't allowed in those spaces as it is. They're very incredibly strict about it. So again, some of it is just fear, but it's also because we have as an industry, it's our job to be ambassadors for ourselves too, right? And I mean, and most business owners who have like a brick and mortar, they know what I'm talking about because they've had to go to city council and they've had to go to their council person and be like, this is what we're gonna do, and and this is the permit.
And you've got county permits, you've got Clark County permits because the lab space is on the strip. Like our lab is on the strip, and so you've got 2 different licenses, rec and medical for the county and for the state. So you have to go get those. Then you have to go through the rigorous and aggressive deal of like staying compliant for the industry, the ancillary business. So like
anything that would touch your business.
All of the max capacity, all the fire marshal stuff. What about just putting it outside, open air?
So that was actually voted against by our city council again because of fear. So there's effectively a 2-year moratorium within the city of having like that open air venue. Although again, this is where dialogue is so important. We actually surprisingly had some allies in the clean air space because it isn't because they're saying like you really shouldn't smoke, but if you're gonna smoke
weed,
you smoke outside. Smoke where there's open airflow. So for safety, it actually makes more sense. And then you have the people who would find the smell to be a nuisance, right?
Don't all of the casinos allow smoking inside?
Yeah,
cigarette.
You can smoke a cigarette and you can be pulling at the thingy and you'd be like, go get me another drink. Yeah, like that's what it's like.
My husband works on this strip and to be frank, he's told me about like people passing away on machines, and like that's Vegas, unfortunately.
That's just Vegas, darling.
What are the
I want to
what
be
are
that raspy lady pulling at the thing and there's no money in the machine. I'm like, I'll die here. Yeah.
what are the
God,
what are
God
the
forbid it be
what are
the
the
HVAC.
HVAC regulations for cigarette smoke? Do you know that offhand?
But you're talking about way more revenue coming in from a casino.
Oh gosh,
They'll spend 300 grand on making
there
it
were
not
some
smell like
that were
cigarettes.
But I'm just curious if
Yeah,
they're
there were some. I'm being
I'm sorry.
anecdotal because I'm remembering the workshop, but I do remember it varies from, that was also the issue. It varies from type of business to type of business. So there's a multitude of businesses that can allow for smoking, and not all of them are regulated in the same way in terms of like the HVAC requirements. Typically, what I was given, some of the quotes were like 12 or 16 rotations per minute, as opposed to, again, what you saw, which was original. Now they're rolling it back to be more reasonable, and I think it's now 6 and 12. However, those types of conversations are also what we are going to kind of extend out any type of lounge coming online. So and that's okay, because at a certain point, if you're committed to the space, you will create a concept that can be viable, or you will wait the year and a half, and then you'll keep approaching your city council members to discuss, like, okay, this isn't working, this is my bill. And that's where, again, you have that ability to actually get the rule changed.
But you have to wait, like with a legislative session every other year, unlike, Florida, for instance, which is every single year. We can go and tweak and change, adjust as needed when the program rolls out. The implementation can be a little more fluid, but you have to wait. So like
effectively, for the most part, unfortunately,
horrible. So if you get something wrong or you forget something, changing it or addressing it is almost like it's just a waiting game.
It's 3 times as hard, to be honest, because also you have to think of the fact that it's Nevada, and we are super conscious and have a very heavy, like, there's a very heavy gaming voice, there's a very heavy resort voice, there's a very heavy mining voice in terms of the coalitions in our state. So they're not all of them are as friendly towards towards the idea of like an unfettered cannabis industry or market, right? So all of those things do come into play. It does help in the sense that I know, for example, what's coming down the pipeline, and I have a lot more ability to predict, like, okay, based historically, I know with a good amount of certainty, there's at least a few initiatives that could really improve and change the industry that'll be under review next year.
Plus you can get your fingers around it, and you have more time to kind of manipulate a Senate or House member, or kind of sway someone.
I wouldn't say manipulate, because we always like to think that the truth, will show them the right way.
More like convince somebody, or help them to change their mindset.
Sway them.
Sway them is but I don't, swaying sounds like kind of like just do this, like quid pro quo whoa.
Well, I think a really good example would be like, because I know exactly what you're saying, and you're absolutely right, because not every legislator is in cannabis or deals with it. It's just that their constituent, if it's an issue that their constituents are concerned about, they're concerned, right? So when we had our last meeting in August, we had a couple of representatives come out, and one of them was a senator, Rochelle Wen, who wrote the psilocybin bill that passed this session. She's amazing ally and advocate of our industry here. Her neighbor was one of the licensees that was really negatively affected by what we called stacked fines. So, like, long story short, with that medical recreational, like, let's say you didn't have license, like, let's say you didn't have like paper towels in your hand washing station, that's a category fine, and it gets stacked. So you would be like charged $20,000 for both licenses for not having your water. Like, that isn't really where you should be charging. Like, be more concerned about the cannabis out the back door, if there's any, than like the hand washing station. It's going to get refilled. You were probably there during a shift change. But those types of issues, she was alerted to that because she had the chance to talk to her neighbor. Like, that was an issue, and it has been that one that our entire industry has been aware of, and we've been coalition building and supporting behind. But like, those little moments are really what help alert our representatives to the fact that we need help, and we need their help specifically.
Kind
I
of
think
feels like once session like commences, it's really hard, almost impossible to get someone to change their mind. It's like almost like they go into session with this is how I'm going to vote on these topics. I'm on these committees, and we're not going to hear these types of, cannabis topics. I mean, that's how it is in Florida, at least. Like some people, they're going to introduce a bill that they are passionate, that is right for the community. It's going to die. It's not going anywhere. No, and that's because the hosts or the, committee chairs that they are put in front of, they get assigned their committees, just like you got assigned ways and means. What if the committee chair and co-chair didn't want to hear it? They don't have to schedule it, and they'll just fizzle out over session days. So it's almost like you want to make sure you know who you can count on, who your allies are at the Capitol, and then you just like tug on their heartstrings and ask for favors, and a little wink and a nudge and a
Yeah.
Starbucks.
Also, winking on a Starbucks. No, we have to. We try not to get them gifts because you have to document it on. Like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'll just give you a handshake.
Starbucks
I
for
think,
you while you
all
meet
of
with
this
them.
seems very representative of what's been a ubiquitous problem throughout the cannabis industry, which is where you see, most of the people that are involved in it are individuals that love cannabis for one reason or another, or just want to be part of it, want to improve it. But all of these kinds of, rules and obstacles seem like they make it so difficult for the individual entrepreneur that, just wants to get into the business or create something to do it. If you have to have hundreds of thousands of dollars of an investment in a business that you're not sure is even going to get going, that's a huge undertaking for, someone that wants to just try their luck in the business. You can't do it.
You have
It's
more to lose. So they think since you have so much to lose, you're not going to mess up. But actually, because you have so much to lose, you're going to do whatever it takes, good, bad, or ugly.
or think about that's a possible reality, but think about if you're just, Joe Schmo, or what about if you're one of the people that have been most affected by the marijuana laws, like a minority person that on average, right, you're going to have less income potential, or etc. On average. It's not, of course, always true, but how can but to say, oh well, you have to go get a loan for a couple $100,000, it's not, I mean, that's not realistic for most people, but let alone if you've been disadvantaged for any reason, disenfranchised, right? So just seems like a lot of bullshit. That's what
You're right.
The cost. So I am a little bit more extreme than my colleagues, and I'm be very clear that I speak only for myself when I say this next
She did a
situation.
little disclaimer like we do. How adorable.
Love you guys. This is just me. And this is from my experience in this space and my personal journey. I really think I appreciate what regulators and lawyers and everybody has tried to do by establishing what we call a privileged industry. And that's what we call anything that's like a vice, like gaming, prostitution, like it's privileged,
all
right?
The fun
you have
stuff.
to have a higher standard when it comes to the background checks and the expectations that you're beholden to. I understand the reasoning. I do not agree with the implementation, because what you are doing is you're creating a lot of situations that if you're a real capitalist, the market would naturally kind of take care of if you allowed it to do so. I personally do not believe that there should be real limitations like we're seeing on the number of licenses, because I just don't believe that no matter how much you freed up, that you will have a cannabis store on every corner. I don't think it's gonna, I don't think that I think that threat and that myth around like having only certain types of licenses to certain types of people I don't believe in that. Because look at what it hasn't happened with anything else. There's a different business on every single corner by my home. There's multiples of that businesses in the city, sure. But like I would never say
if you're all lined
like
up
that just doesn't make sense. Exactly. And I understand. Yeah. So like for
kind of the
me,
basis of capitalism, right? That you let everyone try that wants to try, and the best will survive.
Like like if your business isn't safe, if you don't have sound business practices, if you're not taught how to manage the type of wealth that is required by default, but through the needs of these like equity requirements in our licenses alone, like how you're set up for failure anyways. Like there's a lot of honestly, it's an incredibly nuanced conversation. I think that we need to do everything from invest in specific types of like operator training programs and
Yep.
fundraising programs to assist people in how to
Capital.
manage their money. Like we, even at the highest level, one of our largest licensees just entered into receivership less than a few weeks ago. And they're considered too big to fail, but they failed to mismanage dozens of licenses. I mean, they failed to manage, well, dozens of licenses, right? So we're still not, the formula isn't perfect. And then we also really open ourselves up to litigation when you start having conversations around suitability and this or that. Like, well, you could make it a lot simpler for everybody by making it a lot more accessible and letting the business models that are good succeed. I do understand though, like people, like if I was on the other end of that and I had found all of my best friends, gotten them to give me $100,000 just so we could operate a license, and we're struggling to make ends meet. And if I was hearing myself speak, I would be like, hold your horses, girly. I fought for this license. I did all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I did it. I made it through. Who are you to just come in? So like I do try to give respect and try to remain aware of like how many real nuances there are to that. But at the end of the day, like I see us as being the most successful with the fewest barriers and the best set of tools, which also includes descheduling.
You're very fair. I'm gonna definitely say that in the way that you talk about your
The journalist, right?
I mean, I forgot
sides.
about that. Yeah, that actually makes good sense because she's giving us both sides. She's giving, and the disclaimer was
And she's a Gemini.
adorable
So she can see both
Gemini
sides of
disclaimer journalism. But you're right. Like you kind of have to be accepting of both sides of the game. You have to advocate and be an activist advocate, you know, for the guy that can't participate, but you also understand why you are very blessed also to be able to participate on this side, and you know those people as well. So you can't please everybody. At the end of the day, I would like to think that the next 5-10 years in cannabis will be more of a free market, but like capitalism is all up in cannabis. Whoever says it's not, it's all up in there. It is in there. Because if it wasn't, they would just
trying to make babies with this rescheduling thing, trying to make big pharma babies. I don't know.
What is your opinion on the re versus D versus
I think it's a sneaky way to extend the decision to deschedule. I think that rescheduling would harm, you know, I don't think it would do the good that people think it's going to do. I think it would be a net neutral when it comes to safe banking access, because there isn't really anything in there to specifically address it. There's some really great dialogue going on in the patient advocacy space, highlighting just some historical facts about like what scheduling does, and you know that there's like stamps that the DEA has to issue out to different growers, and like there's a whole process then for the FDA to approve new products. So if you're somebody who's expecting that rescheduling to like all of a sudden make it so that your dispensaries are legal, that is absolutely not what is going to happen. You might maybe one day be able to go get a weed pill from Walgreens, but like
that's made by a pharmaceutical company.
And again, not your local grower. And I also know, just again, from being in the space for so long, anecdotally, like the federal growers, the joints that are given in that program, like it's the whole plant is ground up. It's like, it's not a real joint even. Like, so you're not even, it's not like you're going to get better product anyways. So there is a market that has obviously, evidently by the billions invested in making good, safe products. I think it would be the most major misuse of any type of economic tool to just ignore everything that we've done. And I think that rescheduling kind of does that. I appreciate the lawyerly like navigation through descheduling versus rescheduling, because it did not escape my notice that you know, the recommendation is to like, we made a recommendation in our state to remove cannabis from the schedule, but we have like we wanted it removed. It doesn't specify reschedule or deschedule. That's where the attorneys get to play, right? That's where the politicians get to play. Yes, yeah, unscheduled. So that's where it's our job as an industry, as advocates, to push back and say deschedule. And we're very lucky. We have the historical legal background of our ACLU here won a lawsuit against our Board of Pharmacology for basically treating cannabis as a federally unscheduled substance when we effectively as a state do not. So we know that the push is for it to be descheduled, and we have like that legal background to rely on when we're shaping these conversations at the local level, and we still are. So there's actually a commission that has been tasked with discussing this as a result of the legislation that we passed, the chamber passed this past session with Senator Dallas Harris, SB 277.
You guys have been so busy. What are your thoughts on expungement of record? People that are incarcerated, having nonviolent cannabis crimes being forgiven and expunged off their record, being released possibly from incarceration. What are your thoughts and your stance from the Chamber of Cannabis's perspective?
We're super passionate. Justice is one of our pillars. And really, actually, what we had advocated for at the beginning of session was to allow all ex-felons to basically have excluded felony verbiage in our cannabis laws that removes anybody who has like committed very serious, very violent crimes from even bothering to apply. Now, that verbiage has had a chilling result in general on folks trying to apply. So anybody basically with a felony as a result has tried and failed or not been able to get consistent answers. So what we advocate is for the opening up of that completely, so that way the employers can decide what they want to do. Nevada is an at-will state. There is no way that we could ever write a law that will force anybody to make a hiring decision that they or their team would not support or feel safe doing. That being said,
oh, no, go ahead. Finish your thought. Sorry. That being said,
it is a more nuanced conversation. It's one that I'm really excited to get to have, because it really pushes like my boundaries of acceptance and openness as an advocate. You know, my father was actually like he was a felon for many years for violent crimes, and then he also years later, after rehabilitating himself, was also the victim of a raid with where they had the wrong name on the arrest warrant because we're Mexican American. So like I've really and he's just not able to participate in any way. And I like, if you look at him, you know, he has like nerve damage on his legs. He's not going to hurt anybody, but he would probably make you laugh if he was your bud tender.
Does he want to be in cannabis?
Oh no, he has for years, and it's been something that just has always like I haven't necessarily like, you know, been like, that hasn't always been my mission, but it was really cool to be able to realize that he could move here and that could positively impact him. So we're all for expungement. We're all for record sealing in Nevada. That's our version of that we have. M4MM is one of our partner organizations, and they work with the Last Prisoner Project to do record sealing and expungements. Yeah, they're like, and it is such difficult work. And there's so much sensitivity required. Just as, again, as like, I'm a very empathetic person, and I really believe in the work that we do. So like, what we're trying to do now with this process is now the CCB has a mandate to create a process for people, even with excluded felonies, to petition to the CCB for work suitability, basically investigation.
Isn't that kind of like you're talking about the sensitivity of the whole subject and having to be aware of the sensitivity, but then you're saying, okay, these are the options you have if you want to work in the industry. You need to start talking about the most darkest parts of your existence and your history, and you have to disclose it to work for us. It's like, it's almost like, hey, get ready to be really vulnerable in front of a bunch of strangers to advocate for your cause just to work. And I think that's almost it's unreasonable. It's like cruel and unusual punishment for something that you already served your time for, to have to go and tell everybody everything you did just to be able to work.
Cynthia.
I'm just saying that's like really messed up.
To
be like, hey, I've already served my time, but I'm going to talk to you and you're going to get to judge me. And I'm going to tell you what I did again and again and again. And then you're probably going to say no. And then I'm just here, like vulnerable.
1,000%, 1,000%. And on top of it, it's not just a vulnerable scenario. It's a scenario that resulted in a bad outcome for them, right? Because they typically they serve time. Like it was a traumatizing experience, and you're 1,010% right. We saw it in person at our last CCB meeting last month. We actually had a gentleman come up. I almost cried in the hearing room. He was like, he was a sex offender from 30 years ago, has an autistic child who he grows medicine for because his child needs those cultivars. And he brought like his recommendation from his therapist, like all of these, he had his Ganjier certificate. He worked so incredibly hard. And I was really, really proud of him as a human, just knowing like how difficult that is, but then just grateful for the opportunity and the awareness, because I want to make sure that we're if that's the situation you're put in, I want you to be treated with compassion. I want you to be given a real answer forward. And I also want people to have the opportunity to get to know you and not the crime that you've already done your time and paid your dues to society for.
You're being judged over and over again. It's like you were judged and you were sentenced, and then you get out, you have to be judged all over again for the stuff that's horrible. I have people that are close to me that have served time, and they've also been treated differently for cannabis use in different states that were not friendly, and it's going to follow them, and it probably affects them. And like it pains me to think about some of the people that did nonviolent crimes, and they love the fact that it's all legal and they cannot participate.
So what's your opinion on people that are employed by the state, and in a state where it's legal, it's run by the state, but then they may work in an agency, whether it be a prison,
be specific,
or maybe they're a nurse,
nursing,
right? Maybe they're in nursing, and the board of nursing says, oh no, you can't, you have cannabis in your system, you're a drug addict, and you can't work unless you become with all the other addicts.
Give her some backstory, because this was a guest that we had on twice.
Oh,
that's what he's talking about.
Okay.
Well, and we had that guest, and then we also had prison
corrections officers. Yeah, 3 corrections officers, and then
the PC
one nurse that came on twice anonymously to talk about her experience just applying for a job after legally being able to utilize cannabis in a legal state of Colorado, and then coming and just applying in Florida. What Dr. Davis is referencing is some of our past guests that, like, what are your thoughts on government employees' use of cannabis and how there's different.
I think everybody should use cannabis, to be honest. I think that the chances are that many of those government employees probably use things like Xanax or Ambien when they're stressed out or they're highly caffeinated or doing something. I think
how do we address that though? Like legislatively, how do we change the government employees to be able to utilize cannabis in any medical or adult use fashion?
By completely descheduling it, frankly. Like if it isn't on a list, I think it will help. There is, unfortunately, your employer can always say, hey, you can't do X, Y, or Z, right? And I think that's the federal government's gonna probably be the federal government in that way.
But if it's scheduled, can they differentiate between saying, oh, you can smoke tobacco, you can drink alcohol, those are descheduled, but you can't utilize marijuana even though it's now descheduled? Like can they differentiate if they've categorized them in the same category?
Federal government descheduling should allow for some more opportunity, but not state, right?
So I wish I was an expert in HR, employee law. I'm not, so that's where I have to express my limitation there. But just if we want to just keep going tangentially, and based off of logic, yeah, your state is going to be guided by your federal, because as it relates to funding, right? So where in the funding lie, like wherever those funding ties lie, that's usually where the raveling and the unraveling can do. So in so much as getting it off of a scheduled substance list, what it will do is like it won't be part of any type of reporting rules
Yeah,
or
the
like
drug screen.
prescription rules or anything like that. Like it will be completely off of that list. That's not to say that it's not on a list of substances that an employer might be aware of and want to make sure that they're telling you how they want you to behave around it because of liability purposes, insurance being what it is.
I'm not
Yeah.
advocating, I'm not advocating, let me be clear. I'm not advocating for rescheduling, but just
Oh no, I'm
putting,
not saying.
but just putting it out there. If you rescheduled it instead of descheduled it, would that solve that problem where, because people can go to work use and have oxycodone or Xanax,
But they don't
in
test
their
for it on
system.
a
No,
urinalysis.
they test for it, but if you have a prescription for it because it is a DEA
Oh,
scheduled drug, you get a pass. Unless
what about
unless
alcohol?
very, very specific instances where that's not true, like if you're a pilot, for example.
Do they
But
test for alcohol?
does who?
So
Like Department of Health. Department of Health on a standard drug screen for an applicant for a job.
No, but alcohol is a little different also because we have a standardized test that we can say you are impaired or you're not impaired. And one of the problems I think with cannabis is that you don't have that. It's more binary, like you have it in your system or you don't, but it doesn't indicate whether you're impaired or not in any way.
Okay, so that makes sense. But like if it's descheduled, unscheduled, it's no longer a thing that is like on
it's
the
not on
list
the
of
list of
no-nos.
controlled substances because it's not a controlled substance. Those controls in theory wouldn't exist as much
Yeah, you
unless
don't have to justify it.
But controlled also does mean in theory, yes, if you had a prescription, it could be okay unless your employer says it's not. And right now, the way that they're just opting to say that it's not. And then the other hurdle you have is a lot of people, for whatever reason, they don't like or want their name on a list when it comes to cannabis. Point period blank. True. From veterans to patients to people with family members who have charges. Like the list runs the gamut truly. And I still believe that all use is medical use. I think recreation is self-care. I think they're both critical parts of a balanced, healthy person and life. And I think cannabis can provide that for millions of people, and it does. I don't want to speak to anybody's personal decision as to whether or not they should get a prescription. Because I personally get torn about it all the time. Like, am I helping? Am I hurting? Like, I can't. I don't know.
I always know that I'm doing the
clarify.
right thing when I go and buy weed. I'm like, this is exactly where I should be.
I want to clarify though that even though we say a weed or marijuana or cannabis prescription, it's not really a prescription because it's not governed by the DEA.
Yeah, it's a recommendation.
I don't know that employers can persecute their employees for an actual prescription. I don't think they're not allowed to ask.
HIPAA.
No, and I'm not even speaking to that. I'm speaking simply, again, much more simple, like the fear of somebody, just people are afraid of being on a list and having cannabis be on that. Like, I don't like parents, they don't want somebody to know that they're on a medical recommendation list for cannabis because they're afraid of getting their child. We have people here who moved to Nevada that consider themselves medical refugees because they would have risked losing their children to use cannabis and be a good parent, right? So it's just a really good
point. They can use it against you, although you're disclosing and being honest.
And I don't even subscribe to that. Yeah, and I don't even think, okay, cool. So what? You're on a medical patients list. That's a good thing because now we can go take it and show the regulators, hey, we have all these patients. It could be good, it could be bad, but it's a personal choice, and I'm not here to make that for anybody else.
Yeah, it's definitely something you have to consider. You don't want to jump in blindly. You have to consider those things. Obviously custody probably isn't at the top of someone's list when they are like, it's available in a market that's implementing a program. But also, what we had in this state happen is at the very beginning, and no one really talked about this, was that all of the patients that signed up for the program after implementation in 2017 were we gave our info. We were provided everything was HIPAA compliant. We were provided a patient identification card with a unique identifier number. It was good for a year. And it was supposed to be completely secure and safe. If you got pulled over, the cop would not know that you were a patient before unless they found something and you have to justify. It felt pretty secure. But then we started, like, all the patients, and I'm not saying every single one, but I'm saying a lot of us patients started getting these mailers from CVS Caremark. And I know I sound super weird, but the only reason we knew that they got the information from like the registry is because some of us didn't put our home address. We put a different address, and it got sent to the different address under your name. And they're like, how would they have it? And my patient number was on this mailer. My unique identifier was on this mailer, and nobody talked about the information getting out because we were all so worried that we were going to be blacklisted or something, even though that was a huge breach of our personal identification. At the beginning, there weren't a lot of patients. We didn't want to make a lot of noise or fuss, but I still actually have it in my drawer over here. I should pull it out sometime. But my PR whatever patient identification number was on this mailer for CVS, and it was sent to an address that was not associated with my current driver's license and stuff, and it was still my address, but it was weird. And it happened to a bunch of us patients at the beginning, and we didn't talk about it because we didn't want to be put on a list, even though they did put us.
You don't want to be put on blast.
Put us on a list. They put us on a mailer list.
Do you theorize that there was a breach and somebody was able to break in and breach that, or that it was?
Why would someone break in and then send me a CVS Caremark mailer?
I don't know, maybe it was worth a lot of money, but on the black market.
What's worth more? Selling my info to a retailer that wants a patient list and not giving a crap about patient info for a marijuana program? That seems more feasible, that it would just be sold off because I didn't read the fine print. Who knows what else was there? Remember, as we dove into the fine print, but I digress. I just know that, like, yes, when you say you don't want to be on a list, like, you also don't want to be the one that pushes back on a program that is giving you this medicine.
Exactly.
Because what if they take it away? What if they say you can't utilize the
What if
program
they,
anymore?
come after you for speaking up and raid you? And
Exactly.
They can raid me. I work from home. It's going to be an awfully fruitless raid, and the dogs are going to go nuts.
But I'm
like, yapping dogs and dust bunnies coming all day.
I was like, if you want to see a bunch of dog hair everywhere, come on into the house. But there's like a perfect amount of weed, the legal amount of cannabis products, and it's gonna be very uneventful. If they raid you, Justin, because
that's what happened. That's what happened. I was one of the first physicians in Florida, Bri, and I was, in the beginning, I would speak out, and I advocated for patients. I actually went, stupidly now, I suppose, but I went in front of the board of medicine, very politely, spoke, at why they should consider certain policies, etc., only to be, had undercover agents sent to me, and then agents bust into my office and raid everything. Went to court, took years and years, had to go to court. They refused to settle. Even once I was found not guilty on all charges, and the board was forced to dismiss me, the head of the board, of medical board, actually personally asked the state attorney if they would pursue it further and take it to the District Court of Appeals. So they did it, because he asked them to. It was found, they threw it out.
Yeah. Everything's gone, but I swear Justin has PTSD.
Yeah, I have a little PTSD, I'll tell you.
Yeah, from like, he won't do certain things, even though he's completely allowed to under his license. He's doing everything compliantly. If anything, Justin's overly compliant because of the amount of paperwork, documentation, and the length of time he takes to see a damn client. You could be.
But here's the thing: is I was the same way before the raid. I was extremely.
I know, but you've been a little conservative with certain things because the fear of them coming back after you when you were just doing the right thing before.
But I was conservative before, which maybe that saved my ass.
Yeah, talking to the Board of Medicine about cannabis use.
Well, that was not conservative. That was stupid, I suppose, in retrospect. But I didn't know that be targeted for that.
Yeah.
Again, it's tough because like I always try to, being journalist, I always try to remember how like the layman might think. But I've just been writing so hard for this plant for so long. It is a little bit shocking. It's kind of like you went up and said, "Hey, vitamin C is good for you," and you got you got rated, because that is truly, it's vitamin THC.
They send undercover
And
agents in to infiltrate his patients. There's
Yes,
and
after providing
then they
educational and
rated
informational information to like industry professionals. He was
oh,
just
so they had a
providing.
reason to go in to like try to see if you were doing anything weird with patient information.
No, he probably pissed off somebody when he was speaking about the benefits of cannabis, and they were like, "Hey, by the way, maybe you should look deeper at this office," because to be honest, I mean, there are physicians in the program that are doing nefarious activities. We all know that. We see it all the time. We're not going to go and out them. We're not narcs, but like Justin was not one of those. And so like
not by a
so
long shot.
somebody had to go and like whisper, go check out the Davis office, and then investigate. They couldn't find anything, so they had to
That's
go
insane.
send a sting operation in, and then get you on
That's
some
right.
low-hanging fruit that never ended up holding up. But you do have PTSD from that experience.
So like so my mom is in the medical field. She's a medical assistant for many years, really wonderful at her job. She worked at an office and had a traumatic experience because that doctor was nefarious and he killed people by overprescribing opioids. And he was investigated by the DEA, and they did do a raid in his thing. And my mom was the only person where, like, when she answered, they would hang up because she would ask the right questions. Like, she would like refuse the people, like the agents that were very obviously just booking an appointment to get an opioid. But it hurts my heart so much to hear that like doctors like that, they took them like 3 or 4 years, and he hurt, and multiple people passed away as a result of his practice. And like, that's the person that we should be focusing on. And those are the recommendations that we should be questioning and rating people about, not just speaking up about the potential benefits of cannabis. I'm so sorry that you went through that, but like, hell yeah for getting out of it. Because again, there are doctors out there prescribing things that could hurt us a lot more than a joint or an edible at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Most
Justin, you're gonna be okay. Justin,
You got this. We got you, Justin.
Yeah, we have your support.
Don't worry.
This gradually turned into a show about Dr. Davis. No,
it's
actually
back to Bri Padilla.
Well, your insight,
Legend.
to close out the show, I do want to say your insight is incredibly, it's just balanced, it's even, it's fair. It's also like refreshing to kind of see somebody that knows and understands both sides, because there's a lot of advocates out there that are like, free the plant. And
Burn
that's
it all
it.
down. No,
And
I'm
that's
like
it.
that on Sundays.
Like, period,
But,
just
the rest
free
of
the
the
plant.
week,
But you've got that ... after it. And you're like, in a responsible fashion with the appropriate whatever, because of the fact that you guys, there is a history there that you do, you're very cognizant of. And you can see that when you speak about cannabis, that your shit and you're a badass bitch. So I'm very, very proud to know you. And I'm very glad you came on the show, because one thing I really love is strong, powerful women. And we had Simple Seeds CEO. She was a badass too. I like her. We need to get like a little girl club together and go fight cannabis crimes, but like under the influence of cannabis.
I have costumes. I throw monthly events.
I know you
for
did.
Women in
Like,
the cannabis
you didn't even
space.
have to say it. I know you did. I can tell by your costume owning face. I love it.
No. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for this conversation. It was a pleasure. And it isn't often that I get to talk to people who have as balanced of a perspective as you both. And I really enjoy talking to both of you. I feel like at certain parts you each took parts of my feelings and regurgitated them out for the audience. So I am so happy to be here. And if anytime you need a homie from Vegas, I'll be here.
I will be out there soon for MJ Bits. Yes.
Oh, come on down. All right, we got you.
I got us press passes.
All right. Dr. Justin's coming to town.
We just have to do an episode So like that's all, and then the rest
That's
is
right. Actually, my dear friend and colleague does have access to recording equipment and stuff because they do the Marijuana News Network stuff. So
Yep.
they go on site and record stuff. So happy to
Okay.
connect.
We will connect with you for MJ Biz because I love knowing people in Vegas.
Hell yeah! Now you know me.
Just in case, you never know.
When is MJ Biz this year?
November 28th.
Yes, I always know it's in fall, and then like I make sure I pack really light so that I have extra room in my suitcase for anything that's not nailed down. Because when people go to listen to speakers, I'm like clearing tables of swag.
Oh yes,
I have no shame. I don't need to hear anything.
Me neither.
I don't need to go talk to people that I've talked to 1,000 times. I need to get those rolling papers that are funny with a little tray, and I want those flat brim hats, and I want all the t-shirts I never wear except for to bed. Yes. What's that?
You like swag?
Yeah, I love swag.
It's a gold.
Doesn't matter. Yes.
It's yours. I have so much swag for you. It's great. Oh, it's be wonderful.
I'll give you my home address after we stop recording. Don't want to make that mistake again. All right. This is Cynthia Brewer signing off for the Marijuana Mind. We will talk to you next week. And my salacious co-host, he who is also known as Jay Nasty.
Keeping it green, keeping it lean as always.
Bye, y'all.